So today, now Jim says, this is Jim and I'm Charles. Jim says I have to talk from the chest today, which means using a little bit of a louder voice, outside voice, New Yorker voice.
Is
that better?
A little bit better. A little more assertive. There you go.
I'm comfortable in my soft-spokenness.
Yes, the soft, smooth power of logic.
I'm going to see how long it takes you to get not soft and smooth on today's topic.
It won't take long. But before we jump into that, I figured maybe we stop and do a little personal tidbits here. So apparently your favorite gypsy guitar player is making a long-awaited trip to the States.
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Unless he chickens out at the last minute.
Why would he chicken out? Is he scared of something?
No, but some of those
nervous
guys,
coming to America now?
Some of the guys.
Who is this, by the way?
His name's Angelo DeBar, and he's a French gypsy. Plays in the style of Django Reinhardt, whose music I love, whose music most people don't know about, but that's okay. But
it's hip.
I think it's
too many people knew about it. Wouldn't
I
be
think
hip.
it's hip.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's cool.
Right. If too many people knew about it, it would be passé. But
yeah. Then you have to go find something else.
No, I'd still like it. I wouldn't care.
So where's he coming to?
Smith College, of all places, in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Boy, I hope he comes during the warm weather.
Yes, it'll be warm.
Sheesh. Okay.
In June.
So you're going to make that trek?
I believe I may.
I think you will. Why don't you go buy a fire truck while you're up there? I'm sure they got a few for sale up there.
They might.
Yeah, there you go. You've come close a couple times. You keep missing it.
I actually missed one on eBay that Tamara told me, don't forget to look at that one tomorrow morning.
Now see, look at that. She's encouraging you to buy one. What's stopping you?
I forgot to look at it, which is terrible because it was perfect and it went for a good low price. I'd probably had to get David King to haul it on a low boy down here, but
that's nothing. That's doable.
Yeah. So next time.
If you get one, we'll do a podcast from the fire truck.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. All right, that's cool. I guess my personal thing, I have had to completely change my life over the last 4 weeks because I got diagnosed as type 2, which you know all about because you're my physician. And it has been a big change. No sugar, no white flour. I've cut the vegetable oils out as much as I can, too, because of the heart thing. High fiber. I've started exercising 4 days a week. Yeah, joined the gym and everything. Been going, pretty faithful. Forgot my gym card one morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to run in the freezing cold.
Did you run back home?
No, I ran for about 15 minutes. It was like 1 degree outside. I got about 15 minutes. I'm like, all right, that's enough. All right, I've kept my commitment. I'm going inside. But I tell you what, it's until something like this happens in your life and you have to make this kind of change, you don't realize how closely that your eating habits are tied to your identity and who you are and your thinking and just your minds. I mean, let's face it. Other than breathing and other basic bodily functions, one of the very first things you do is eat. And it's so psychological in addition to being physical. And so having to radically change how you eat is just such a total paradigm shift. It's going good. I try not to torture my family too much about it. So they're allowed to have reasonable number of carbs, more than I am. So, but yes, that's basically, I guess, what's going on with me. But today, in today's podcast, we are, if I had to give a title to this podcast, I would say this is our political festivus.
At the airing of grievances?
Airing of grievances. We've kind of done that kind of on the fly here and there through our podcast, but now we're going to officially just kind of dump it all in one show. Instead of a 30-second shred, this is going to be about a 30-minute shred. So, Charles, who actually has some pretty forceful political opinions, believe it or not.
Do I?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch you on Facebook. You've got a few things to say. So now's your chance.
Well,
I
as
wanna
I
hear
say,
it.
I just simply choose to think for myself. I don't
Okay.
want someone else to decide my position. But
Well, no, you shouldn't.
about
So, I mean, so let's kind of dive into this.
okay,
All right. Uh,
shallow end or deep end?
let's go into deep end right off the bat. Let's go into the orange-haired end of things.
Okay. Yeah, I know where that's going. Well, let me just say, I want a Christian politics. I don't want a conservative or a liberal pundit thinking for me. I don't even want a pastor thinking for me. Mm-hmm. Sorry to staff out there and Jim's pastor, but no, I want a Christian politics. And I don't think we can depend particularly on pundits.
Okay, now when you say you want a Christian politics,
That sounds like John Howard Yoder, doesn't it?
well, that sounds like you're saying you want a Christian America that's really Christian. What do you mean by you want a Christian politics?
I mean, I want a politics, to use the noun collectively, that's driven by the Christian gospel.
Okay, that's what you advocate.
That is what I advocate.
Okay.
Which is which best I can tell, neither political party is selling that, so to speak.
Well, we're not in the eschaton, so I wouldn't totally expect that anyway.
Well, but yet, and I suppose the elephant in the room would be, particularly evangelical Christianity has been pretty well swept off its feet by the Republican Party. I mean, this has its origins back in the... No, there's no about it. This has its
I would say that was true 20 years ago.
No, well, it was definitely true 20 years ago. As part of a voting coalition cobbled together when Reagan's
the moral
advisors
majority
realized
right. I mean,
that they
nowadays
couldn't win
it's a
on
different picture. Though.
Nah, well, okay, it is different, but it's still we have too many people willing to simply say whatever the guy with an R on his shirt says, I agree with. And the
see, I want to agree with you, but I would qualify that. I think now the evangelical alignment politically is with a certain. I think they're very disenchanted with the establishment, to use a very overused word, the establishment Republican Party.
Yeah, they're going with the Tea Party.
They don't really have any use for establishment, quote unquote, Republicans. They have definitely put all of their eggs in the basket of the Trump train.
It's just arguably worse because, I mean, the Tea Party is...
In some ways, yeah.
And the Tea Party is all about...
The Tea Party? Who talks about Tea Party anymore, though?
Well, that was... Okay, that was so last year.
That was like 5 years ago.
3 years ago. Well, but certain things, I mean, I have long considered myself... I've always considered myself a conservative because conservatives have stood up for positions that are worth standing up for the gospel and our right to preach it and our right to live it, standing up for the rights of the unborn, standing up for our Second Amendment rights, standing up for being proud of the country we live in.
A basic classical constitutional...
the things that are important to most all of us. Somehow, somewhere along the line, people have decided that along with that should go climate change denial, anti-vaccine in some cases, just a load of horse crap that has been stuck on to what being a conservative is, and I don't like it. And there are consequences to this. I mean, our decision, not ours, but the decision on the part of a lot of evangelical Christians to back Trump unashamedly has really, really lowered our stock in the eyes of a lot of people. I mean, we look like the hypocrites Jesus is talking about in the Gospels. And there's just no question about that. And I don't like it.
A lot of people say we don't care what they think. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that's what they would say. I don't care what we look like in their eyes. I care what we look like because I want to reach those people. It's one that now... It would be. You would not be wrong to say, well, a lot of people who are not Christians, who are living a secular lifestyle, don't want the intrusion of God's rules on their life, and you'd be correct.
But
I'll tell you what I see. I see a serious case, and I think both sides are doing this. But we as Christians are responsible for recognizing when we get sucked into this and not doing it. We're stuck in whataboutism. In other words, for everything that you just said, the common evangelical response is, well, yeah, well, what about this? And they'll point to somebody on the other side who's hypocritical on something.
yeah,
You know, like, for example, okay, they want to complain about sexual immorality within Christianity. And I'll say, oh, yeah, well, what about Meryl Streep sitting there and she knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing and she never said nothing. She's lying through her teeth. That whataboutism reaction. To quote is the name of the fallacy. To quote, is that what it is? The name of that fallacy?
it only goes so far.
Right. It doesn't actually justify yourself.
Let's take say immigration. Well,
Okay.
I mean, maybe we could go through a history of prior to 1924, we had pretty much open borders, and then with restriction, quotas were put on, and basically there was an intent to keep America largely homogenous. We had a preference for Northern and Western European immigrants, and with the act in 1965, that was way relaxed. People were allowed to bring in family members, and it's altered the ethnic composition of the country. And I think we would all have to agree that to some extent it's unsustainable. We can't take everybody. But look at the way we've chosen to do it. Trump, build the wall, and we're clapping behind him.
This
and a lot
is
of these
reaction.
these poor immigrants are thinking, "Gee, my daddy's going to get sent back to Mexico, and I'll never see him again." And we're cheering. We got to be above that. We've got to be, because when we do that, we have no credibility with the lost.
It's an emotional reaction. It's like there's two ways to touch your nose. You can do this way. I mean, there's more than one way to go about dealing with an issue. Yeah, and sitting there and clapping and cheering because some family's just getting shipped off without any knowledge of the details of the specifics or anything like that. I mean,
we don't cheer when a family gets shipped off, but we stand behind Trump and his rhetoric. Finally, because here comes somebody who's willing to fight for us. And
because you have had 8 years of the other side being in power, and it's kind of a boomerang effect.
And even before that, conservatives were still mealy-mouthed about it. No one would come out and say the things that Trump does,
right? Because
he says what a lot of people feel. Yeah, but he says a lot of other stuff too. And today the Haiti and African countries are SHIT whole countries, and we've just got to be better than that.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't do that. Not as the president of the United States. I tell you what, with Trump, and this is an issue that you mentioned today on Facebook. You're talking about. I think it was yesterday about your concern about his rhetoric concerning libel laws. And
everyone
how we
ought to be concerned about
tighten
that.
up these libel laws, and that you were concerned about the free speech implications of that. And like I told you, one of all the things with Trump that have always given me pause, the number one thing is his very cavalier attitude toward the First Amendment. It's one of those things where when the guy we see him as being on our side, oh yeah, great, yeah, that's right, but if he sets a precedent and things invariably will go back to the other side controlling the levers of power. That can be used to turn around and bite you real bad. And so, yeah, I don't like his rhetoric on free speech.
And for those who don't know what he is in essence proposing, which he has no power to do, which is good. He's proposing a system of libel laws that would be closer to those in, say, Britain, where, for all intents and purposes,
or Canada.
Well, it's probably Canada's not quite as bad as Britain, I think. But here, if, for instance, if you were to sue me for libel, the burden of proof would be on you to prove that I libeled you. In Britain, for instance, if you were to sue me, the burden of proof would be on me. Simply put, to prove that I didn't libel you. And the difference there is huge.
Yeah, that is.
And
huge.
pretty foreseeable effects would be small media outlets would be silenced. One lawsuit and they're done, even if it's a frivolous lawsuit doomed to be thrown out.
Well, see, and that is the problem is you don't ever have to actually have a good case. But if you can just get somebody tangled up in the legal system,
that's it.
That's such a burden to the average person that they can't.
Yeah, small media outlets.
Survive it.
Small media outlets would be gone, and large media outlets would be muted and accommodating. Right. It would be a disaster. I mean, he doesn't. He has no power to do it at all.
Yeah, and
but this is the more he says it, the more the blind base of people who don't think, who just follow. Oh yeah,
you are changing the political climate by virtue of the fact that you're the president of the United States. You have a bully pulpit.
If he could succeed in getting that would be disastrous. Not only in terms of what it would entail for switching of parties in the administration, then we would be, conservatives would be, it'd be very easy to go after us when we say things that we believe in.
And that's the one thing we always have to keep in mind is sooner or later the other side is going to get back in power.
They will.
And when they do, they will. I mean, we're doing it. They will use all the precedents that you set to turn things around their way. Now, on the issue of speech and suppressing speech, political speech in particular, I came across an article today on thefederalist.com. And the title of the article is Watch Ex-Twitter Employees Brag About Shadow Banning Political Opinions They Don't Like. Apparently, this guy who is the head of Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. He's done various sting videos. He did the Planned Parenthood ones about selling of fetal body parts. Him and another group, actually, I think, did that. He was the one who did the whole, what was that, political action group 6 years ago, exposed them. He does a lot of exposés. He's conservative. He goes in there and videotapes people saying things that end up making them look bad. He did kind of something backfired on him recently. We tried to get the Washington Post to bite on a phony claim of somebody who said that Roy Moore had gotten her pregnant. He was just trying to bait him to see if they'd take it, and that kind of backfired on him. But apparently he's taped some of these Twitter employees who are basically talking about how these media platforms like Twitter, a lot of these guys that are kind of in the background that run the algorithms and things like that, and run the site, are shadow banning particularly conservative accounts, to where what happens is you don't even know what's happened. You're not notified. But basically, you can go ahead and tweet all you want, but nobody ever sees it. And so, you just think, well, no, everybody's ignoring me. Well, they're not ignoring you. They don't know you're posting because they've shadow banned you. And they have these things called bots, which are programs which kind of search through. And you send up certain red flags through certain words and phrases, and they basically, you're shadow banned. Facebook does something similar when they put you in Facebook jail. Although that's usually for just outright offensive material usually. But the main concern I have is, political suppression of speech is bad. We all know it's bad. It's kind of obvious. But what's going on under the radar is how a lot of these big social media outlets and the multi-billionaire liberal people who own these platforms and basically set the culture for these companies are kind of manipulating us behind the scenes in ways that I think are possibly a greater present danger to political speech.
I don't know if that would be a greater danger than...
Well, because they actually... because they control the mediums through which we speak now. And they literally own them. And because it's a private, voluntary thing versus a public government entity, it kind of gets out from they get under the radar a little bit. They can basically say, well, yeah, the First Amendment's great, but we don't have to let you say anything on this. This is a private entity. You volunteered. Terms and conditions. Oh, you didn't read the terms and conditions? Well, too bad for you. So this is a real concern for me. What are you supposed to do? I don't know. I mean, a lot of this stuff happens. You don't even know it's happening. But that's a concern for me. Politically and with free speech.
Oh, free speech is already under big assault, even on college campuses. I mean, people. I think that's going to. I think hopefully we're going to see.
I think there's a backlash to it.
I think there is, and I think there will be more.
Yeah, I think there's a backlash to that, and that's a good thing. But I mean, politically speaking, so you got the free speech thing, the immigration thing.
It's immigration. Yeah, I mean, one thing. This is an interesting question just to put out there. I mean, there's different camps, I suppose. We've become a very divided society. I mean, there are those who would like to see just a huge melting pot. They don't want me and you celebrating our culture and Latino family down the road celebrating theirs. They essentially want us a big multicultural entity where we all celebrate one another's. And not all of us are in for that. I like my culture. And okay, someone like, say, Pat Buchanan has been a fairly sanguine exponent of a position that says, look, I respect other people's cultures, but I don't want to imbibe it as my own.
Well, multiculturalism is has been a problem that's infected nearly everything for 50 years.
But this is that's its own topic. But just as far as immigration goes, I mean, it's a, and I mentioned Pat Buchanan, who the far left would call it a racist. He isn't.
I would. Really? You don't think he is?
No, I don't think he's. I think he's an exponent of a fairly stark position, but basically that says, look, we're,
I'm surprised you're defending Pat Buchanan. That actually surprises me.
I think there's nothing illogical or his positions are stark, but they're internally consistent. I mean, he basically says, look, I like my culture, I respect yours, but I don't want to assume your culture, and there's nothing wrong with, for instance, immigration policies that say we're a nation that has largely these aspects of culture, and we like them, and we don't wish to assimilate others and become a multicultural entity where rather than celebrating Christmas, we celebrate winter holiday that has features of Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's fairly.
It's wrong to basically have the gun of government pointing at your head saying,
right, but
you will celebrate all of this and you will not give any priority to any particular one. It
very easily scoots over from, I like my I like my culture to we're the majority, so I get to make fun of your culture and say demeaning things and intimidate you. So unfortunately, there's a very thin line between a position like, say, Buchanan's, which I would say isn't. I mean, in my mind, Pat Buchanan is not a racist. But take say some of the things Donald Trump said. There's a fairly thin line between the two, and it goes very easily from I like my culture and I respect yours, but I don't want to pick it up.
Right, and
to I like mine, yours is the minority. I'm going to make fun of you and make you intimidated.
Well, and that's where the individual person is responsible to make the distinctions for themselves.
Have you read much Pat Buchanan?
I haven't read much. Now I do know. I used to like watching my McLaughlin group.
McLaughlin, that and Crossfire and there.
Yeah, he was pretty good on that most of the time. He mixed it up pretty good. I think, based on what little I know, his take on Britain and Churchill and the Nazis was kind of loopy.
Well, his take was that Churchill.
Did you just get done reading a book about that from him?
I read that. I read a good bit of that book. I forget what the title of it was, but I
don't remember either.
But they basically had Churchill not taken the positions he did, a large amount of World War II could have been avoided. Yeah, that's
yeah.
I mean, how are you going to say?
See, that's where I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I think the Nazis were worth defeating, getting rid of that particular.
Right. Well, the arguments he would have made is if we didn't, that perhaps the Holocaust never would have
He
occurred.
kind of reminds me of an
That's
old
a-
school isolationist.
Oh, he is very
The
much
kind
that.
of guy who would have been like, well, that's Europe, that's Europe's problem. We're not getting into that.
That's
Where I kind of have to depart from him.
very much where he'd be on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just I can't buy that. But any other airing of grievances that you would like to make?
I don't know.
If we get ready to wrap up.
My grievance is that we should be, if it's my opinion on this grievance, is we should be Christian first and Republican second. That we should be so forward with the Christian gospel that with, for instance, on immigration, we may not wish to have every, open borders to let everybody in, so that our culture gets diluted. But that doesn't mean that we have to stand up and clap when families are sent home.
See, but here's the thing: the dominant view now is definitely not okay. That our culture, in particular, is something that ought to be preserved and seen as better than another, which is kind of one of the major premises of multiculturalism to begin with. That's a trigger phrase right there. Our culture.
Yeah.
And so, real quick, just gonna throw this at you real quick. Tax cuts, yay or nay?
Oh, that's a heavily nuanced question. Are you talking about corporate tax cuts?
I'm talking about the tax plan they just passed.
I think
thumbs up, thumbs down.
Well, it favors the rich overwhelmingly. There's there's what data we have, trickle down economics don't redistribute wealth.
Well, I think they did at first.
I don't think they ever did.
I think they did at first. I do believe the Laffer curve is valid to a point.
It's tough to say. I mean, if people would do the right thing, it'd be viable, and certainly corporate tax cuts would be a necessary piece to a strategy of building our own infrastructure, rebuilding our manufacturing base, getting our own industries to locate here. But simply cutting corporate taxes is not guaranteed to do that.
No, it's not guaranteed.
It could help. No. I mean, we cut ours from 35 to 20. Ireland's is 12.
The corporate tax, you mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why
we definitely have one of the highest corporate taxes in the world. I do know that. Okay, so you're kind of like a qualified. It
is what it is. I mean, if people,
it's not an evil. It's not a moral outrage to you.
No, it's not. I mean, it's a gimme to the rich. But if the rich do the moral thing,
it's a gimme to me too.
Really?
Yeah, my taxes will go down. They doubled the standard deduction for married couples.
It disproportionately favors the rich, but if the rich do the right thing, everybody benefits.
Well, the rich are by definition disproportionately.
Yeah, so the devil will be in the details.
Oh yeah, it always is. Okay, all right. So, any other final thoughts? Political? Anything you want to get off your chest?
Nope.
Besides your voice?
I do wish I had a deeper voice, but what can I say?
Okay. Well, I think that's about it. So that wraps that up for today. We've kind of discussed our political opinions and everything, and it'll come up again, I'm sure.
It has to.
It's irrepressible. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to borrow this book from Charlie. Am I right? Okay, I borrow this?
Yeah.
I'll bring it back. The End Times Made Simple. Now, if that's one of the worst titles anyone could ever give to a book.
Almost ashamed to admit that I own a book with that title, but this professor is the one, James White, your favorite, one of your favorites.
My favorite Calvinist, yeah. The guy who almost convinces me to be a Calvinist. Yeah.
That was the series of lectures that this guy did was he considered the best work on eschatology he's ever heard. So,
well, I'm going to read this in preparation for our future podcast, so we can start talking about end times. So we'll talk about that, and like I said, I gotta kind of go back over my stuff on
women
egalitarianism versus complementarianism, and women preachers.
But we should have a woman guest on for that one.
Oh, that's risky.
We can take some risks.
Hey, why not? All right, so that's kind of some of the stuff that's coming up. So until then, my name is Jim. This is Charles, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to Riffs and Rabbit Holes. You can learn more about this podcast at our website, www.riffsandrabbitholes.com. That's riffs, the letter N, rabbitholes.com. There you'll find an archive for MP3 and video, plus a blog page and additional resources related to today's topics. You can also contact us there via email with any questions, comments, and even suggestions for future topics. That's www.riffsinrabbitholes.com. You can also find us on our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. Again, thanks for listening. Peace be with you.